We want to expand the pipeline of our students, who are actually majority minority on all of our campuses, into an industry that is notorious for its lack of diversity. Race relations and diversity not just of ethnicity, but of perspectives, are of increasing social relevance, and this distinguished panel will not only acknowledge and discuss the issues and problems, but also how to move forward. We'll talk about how prestigious television awards are increasingly recognizing the work of diverse content creators. We'll discuss how to formulate strategies and policies designed for solutions. We have a diverse range of academic and industry perspectives, and it's now my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Dr. Cheryl Williams is a postdoctoral fellow at Wake Forest University. Dr. Williams conducts research on how people of color, particularly Black women, are represented in the media and how people of color use social media. She's particularly interested in studying how Black people's use of social media is changing social television and social justice. Her research includes ways in which Black women are represented on social media, on reality TV, and in the news. Williams was a newspaper reporter for 10 years, including at the Associated Press, and continues to work as a freelancer. Her work has appeared in media outlets, including NBC, BLK, Essence, and Ebony magazines. She writes about race, demographics, women and gender issues, social media, health, among other issues. She also teaches media representation and journalism classes at Wake Forest's comm department. Mr. Eric Fitzgerald Reid is the Vice President of Entertainment and Tech Policy for Verizon Communications. Mr. Reid has worked for Verizon for 16 years. He analyzes industry trends, manages the telecom department, and emerging high-tech matters as they relate to public policy. Mr. Reid leads Verizon's outreach to an array of Silicon Valley and Hollywood-based stakeholders in content, entertainment, digital media, information technology, and major sports leagues, all with vested interests in telecom policy, regulatory, and legislative matters. And in the community, Mr. Reid is incredibly active. He's on a number of boards, the Toomey Mentorship Board, Silicon Valley Leadership Group, Foundation Board of Directors, and has served on a wide variety of nonprofits, including one supporting families fighting childhood cancer. He's also a member of the Consumer Electronics Association Board of Industry Leaders and the Digital Hollywood Board of Advisors to the OTT Connected TV Hollywood Alliance. Dr. Jacqueline Landrum Sanderlin is the Executive Director, School and Community Relations of Inglewood Unified School District. Dr. Sanderlin has decades of experience with entertainment and education partnerships. She worked for the Compton Unified School District for 21 years, where she served the youth as a teacher, an assistant principal, a principal, and community engagement leader administrator. It was the profound partnership with the William Morris Endeavor Entertainment Talent Agency that was a game changer for Dr. Sanderlin. It was through this partnership they were able to provide long-term effects for students by exposing them to theater, music, art, dance, photography, and much more. She was also able to make an idea into a reality TV show called School Pride, which was aired by NBC. This reality show went around the country to remodel schools to show the importance of a positive school environment. With the assistance of philanthropists and business leaders, she was able to remodel each school aesthetically and programmatically. And in addition to remodeling the interior and exterior, innovative programs were created to expose students to visual and performing arts. Dr. Jeffrey Jones is Chair and Director of the George Foster Peabody Awards at the University of Georgia. And under Dr. Jones' leadership, the Peabody Awards program has entered into a 3-year contract with cable channel Pivot to air 90-minute TV specials of the annual Peabody Awards ceremony. He's created a first-ever advisory board comprised of 25 top-level media industry executives, created a student honor board of Peabody Fellows, launched a fantastic new website, and I know how tough that is, expanded its social media presence, created new forms of original media programming like documentaries and podcasts, and digitized the judging system. Professor Jones is also the author and editor of 5 books on popular politics and entertainment. I'd love to pick your mind about what's currently going on with politics and entertainment. He's also a member of the Entertainment and Media Studies Department in the Grady College of Journalism and Mass Communication. So welcome to our panel, and I will let Dr. Williams kick off the discussion with her presentation on diversity in media. So I'm going to pass my computer on to you.
Okay, thank you.
So there you are in PowerPoint.
Okay. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. As she said, I am Cheryl Williams, and I'm going to talk to you today about why diversity is absolutely necessary in storytelling. I'm going to try my best to make a lot of important points in a short amount of time, so please bear with me if it seems like I'm talking really fast, because that'll come back from my debating days in high school. So what I want to first start off with is this.
You're quite right. The film we've just seen said it all. I think we should say that there's nominated for the best performance by an actor are
Marlon Brando in The Godfather,
Michael Caine in Sleuth,
Laurence Olivier in Sleuth,
Peter O'Toole in Ruling Class,
Paul Winfield in Selma. The winner is Marlon Brando in The Godfather.
accepting the award for Marlon Brando and Godfather is Jacqueline.
Hello, my name is Sashi Littlefeather. I'm Apache, and I'm president of the National Native American Affirmative Image Committee. I'm representing Marlon Brando this evening, and he has asked me to tell you in a very long speech, which I cannot share with you presently because of time, but I will be glad to share with the press afterwards, that he very regretfully cannot accept this very generous award. And the reasons for this being are the treatment of American Indians today by the film industry, excuse me, and on television in movie reruns, and also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee. I beg at this time that I have not intruded upon this evening, and that we will, in the future, our hearts and our understandings will meet with love and generosity. Thank you on behalf of Marlon Brando.
So this was 1973 at the Oscars. And so now we fast forward to 2015 and 2016, and some of the same concerns still exist. That was 43 years ago, and some has changed, but not a lot. So I really just wanted to kind of provide a little bit of historical context for these images, because I think it is of extreme importance for us to talk about this, because even though we are in a day and an age where we have a lot more diversity, and it seems like there is a lot more visibility, not only of people of color, but of people with different sexual identities and people with disabilities across the board, of cross identities of intersections, it seems like we do have a lot more representation, but we actually don't. And this is particularly important right now at this social and political moment that we are in, because in this age of Black Lives Matter and a lot of activism and social justice, people are not only demanding social justice, but they're also demanding just images. What a lot of the Black Lives Matter people are talking about, while we're talking about trying to get more justice, not only in terms of police brutality, but also structural violence that occurs across people of color, is how these images that we continue to see day in and day out, and both fictional and news media continue to uphold some of the same cycles of oppression and some of the same images that continue to show people as not complete human beings. So just as we see people out in the streets demanding justice for jobs, education, employment, we see people also saying that we need images that show people's complete and full humanity so that we will actually be able to understand some of these issues that are going on. Because we know that the Ferguson report came out and said that there was real extreme inequities in terms of the ways that police were patrolling the community and using it as a funding resource, right? But those news stories were not reported. We didn't see those stories, right? So we do need more accurate portrayals. And one of the reasons why we need these portrayals is because the audience is changing. The audience is changing immensely. We know that in the United States will no longer be a country where there is going to be a racial majority, right? 1 in 5 children who are being born today are children of color. The number of people who are of Asian descent in this country, the census projects, are going to double. The Latino community is expected to be the largest group in the United States according to these census predictions, but even though there still is not going to be an overall majority, we still need we still are seeing the changes in demographics, but we're not necessarily seeing these images in Hollywood keep up with that, right? So here I just wanted to share a few statistics with you of people of color and women who are represented in film. We see that women are half of the people who are in the United States, but only about a third, according to this survey according to this census actually, of women who are represented in films. Also, it seems like there is a lot of representation of LGBT people, right? But they still only constitute 4% of the characters on network and cable television. And of those that we do see an overwhelming majority, about 70% are white. So we don't see as many LGBT characters as we think we see, and most of those are cisgender white men. But one of the things that I think is really important is to mention and to really underscore how there are some changes, right? And some of these diverse voices that we're starting to see that are portraying really complex and authentic characterizations of people of color are highlighted in this current season. So Ava DuVernay, the acclaimed director and writer, has this show out on the Oprah Winfrey Network that is based on a book by Natalie Bazile called Queen Sugar. And it is about a family that, a black family that is trying to save their sugarcane farm in Louisiana, right? And this show is important because it is critically acclaimed. I mean, if you haven't heard about this show, I don't know where you've been, because there's buzz about this show all around. And this show actually had earned the Oprah Winfrey Network its highest debut of a show since the network has been around for the past 6 years. This show is also important because, again, it is a really good example of authentic storytelling of people of color, and they have this really profound and strategic and intentional initiative to have more people of color, more women, more people from working class backgrounds, from intersections across the board represented not only on the screen, but most importantly behind the screen. Their writers, their directors, their producers, everyone who is involved in this show is from a diverse background. And so if you want to look it up, they have this hashtag called Inclusive Crew. So when they were filming over the summer and earlier this year, they documented the ways in which they are including people across the board. Another example is the show Atlanta, which was created by Donald Glover, AKA Childish Gambino, for you rap fans out there. His show Atlanta has a team of all black writers. It's set in Atlanta, of course. It's a story of 3 younger black men in their 20s and 30s who are really just trying to find their way. But I think this story is a really good example because how often do we get to see a story of black men coming of age, just simply coming of age, not mired in violence, not downtrodden by all of these intersections of oppression, but actually being and actually telling their stories and just being young men. This is a really good example. And lastly, one of my favorites is Insecure, the show by Issa Rae that just debuted about a week ago on HBO. This was highly anticipated because her career basically started on YouTube. She wanted to tell her own stories, and she started doing that. I mean, how often do we see stories of awkward, like me, Black girls who are just living their lives and just trying to make sense of it all? So this show on YouTube got millions of viewers, millions of clicks, and she ended up translating that into a development deal with HBO. And this show, Insecure, again, it was one of the most highly anticipated shows of this season, and it's a show that she created with Larry Wilmore. So moving on to the power of stories, and I need to sum this up soon because, I don't have that much time, so let me get to it. But I think it's really important for us to underscore the power of stories, right? Whether these stories be fictional stories or the news stories that we see every day, because there is power in these stories. So back in 1968, the Kerner Commission came out with this report that was supposed to investigate why there were hundreds of civic disruptions across the country at that point in time. Riots, rebellions, however people want to capture them. But one of the things that this government report said was that the media was culpable in a lot of these things that were going on because they never really showed what it was truly like to be a Black person living in this country. So what we were seeing was some of these constant stereotypes, archetypes, and tropes, constantly recycled. And if we continue to do that right now in this point in time that is really crucial in our country, then are we going to be culpable at the same time? So I'm going to sum up. I have about 90 seconds left. So what are some of the solutions to be able to make some meaningful connections between Hollywood and academia, right? And also not going to the same well. I mean, if you keep going to NYU and if you keep going to some of the same schools that you go to, you're going to get some of the same storytellers. I don't know why, but growing up in the 80s, seeing shows that are either located in Los Angeles or in New York was pretty much the same. I am a woman who is from the Midwest who now lives down south. Where are the Southern stories? Where are the Midwestern stories? Where are the rural stories? There are a lot of stories that we can be telling, and we need to go to those universities and those areas of the country to tell those stories. Also, I guess I need to really, really sum it up, but I'll just leave it right there. Okay. All right, no, I'll just stop now. I'll just stop, okay. All right, thank you so much. We'll have a question and answer period, and I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sherry. Mr. Reid.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Williams. And I have to say, being surrounded by all these PhDs, even having 2 masters, I feel like I need to go back to school and get back in the classroom and get my PhD as well.
It's overrated.
I just wanted to say thank you all for coming today. My name is Reid. I'm the Vice President of Entertainment and Tech Policy for Verizon. As Dina pointed out at the outset of the webcast, there's a number of different hats that I wear for Verizon. I manage our external affairs, public policy, external affairs outreach to the tech community, to the entertainment community, and I also manage our Verizon Foundation as well for 18 states, including California. So, and the beautiful thing about that is being exposed to a number of different opportunities in industries and to be able to lead and sort of spread the gospel about the great things that corporations are doing, obviously specifically to Verizon, and how we're engaging with our communities. So, taking a step back from all that, there's really 3 quick points that I really want to make sure that everybody understands in terms of the importance of diversity, not only in the entertainment industry, but how it's important to us at Verizon. And I think of them as being reflective of our communities, engagement in our communities, and then investment in our communities. So I'll just quickly explain what all 3 of those mean. In terms of being reflective, our corporation really champions gender and ethnic diversity. In terms of our partnerships, our supplier relationships with those that help us build our wireless networks, if being here in California, if you have a Verizon wireless phone, I hope that it works extremely well. I see a bunch of hands that went up. And if you're from the East Coast and other states in the Northeastern region, I'm sure you're aware of our Fios product as well. But in order to build those sort of networks, these next generation networks, broadband networks that connect people and connect communities, we need to make sure that we go out and we get diverse suppliers as well. I think in a number of cases that gets overlooked, that the companies that are in our local communities aren't reflective of their environments or not reflective of their communities. So Verizon has really done, I think, a really exceptional job in terms of making sure through all levels of management and all employee rankings that we celebrate diversity, whether you're African American, male, female, LGBT, as Dr. Williams pointed out. And we celebrate those differences in our communities. And so reflectiveness is a key part of being, I think, engaged, or at least being a trusted citizen within your community. Moving on to engagement, so this is where the sort of the hand-to-hand holding really takes place. And so we partner with a number of different chambers of commerce, a number of nonprofit organizations, and again, these relationships, as I initiated before in terms of the reflective piece, allow us to go out and seek, whether it's talent for our PR team, whether it's engineers to help us build our networks. That engagement is critically important because if you're not tied into the community, you're not going to be able to get those opportunities. From a supplier diversity standpoint, particularly in procurement, you're not going to be able to reach those folks because you're not engaging them. And so my outreach in terms of meeting with community groups and nonprofits is increasingly important to make sure, again, that we are operating in an environment that's reflective of our local communities. And now the investment piece, the third piece, in terms of science, technology, engineering, and math, that is something that our Verizon Foundation has been really head over heels for and have invested a lot of time and effort in. We have a program that's called the Minority Mailmakers Program, which I was honored to be able to speak at. I'm based in San Francisco, and we have our Verizon Innovation Center there. It's an awesome place. It's one of those facilities that really gets you excited to go to work every day. But the key thing is it really shows that and demonstrates that Verizon is committed to technology. I think when you look around and you probably asked, where Verizon was 5 and 10 years ago, people would just say the phone company. I think if you look at us now, we're in a lot of different spaces, particularly as we continue to invest in fifth-generation wireless networks. We're in the Internet of Things. We're creating smart city solutions. And these are all these technologies that are, again, reflective of our communities. This is what is going to bridge the digital divide that I think a lot of folks talk about in terms of technology engagement. But the key point of all this is getting kids in underrepresented communities exposed to science, technology, and engineering and math will get them to a place where when they're ready to go meet with Dr. Williams and Dr. Jones and Dr. Sanderlin for their classes, they're equipped to be able to become the next engineers and be able to work on networks or be like myself. I'm not an engineer, but learning all about science, technology, engineering, and math allowed me to be able to talk about all the great things that are occurring in the consumer electronics space, 4K, to transition to 8K, working with the movie studios and getting them to understand that all this broadband capacity enables them to be able to do more with their services and technologies. So making sure that kids are critically engaged around STEM and education has been an important foundation for Verizon's work. So now that I've talked about those three things, let me tie it back to why we're here talking about this stuff on this panel and talking about the entertainment industry, which is so dynamic, but I think as Dr. Williams pointed out, there's still some opportunities for diversity to be a part of this industry. Think back to when you were having your cable service and you had hundreds of different cable channels to choose from. Well, now that's kind of evolved. While you still have all those channels, you have a lot of different platforms to watch them on. So you start thinking about Amazon Prime and Netflix and PlayStation View, Roku. These are all great platforms for, again, these diverse voices that traditionally may not have been able to have their content either created or distributed. More platforms has allowed for more consumer engagement. So that's a key part of all that. And then you add in the social media piece in terms of Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter. Again, these are more platforms to show that there are diverse voices that are out there that want to be able to show off some of their talents. You know, I look back at a lot of times, a lot of the different consumer trends that are in the marketplace, and I just want to give you two quick examples. Again, talking about these new platforms and having new avenues for diverse voices to be heard. I just saw that 16% of all households subscribe to multiple over-the-top services. So 16%, that's a lot, and that number is going to continue to grow. 2013, 3 years earlier, only 10%. So you're really starting to see that proliferation again in terms of where's the diverse content that I want in an on-demand environment that allows for time shifting to occur so that, again, this diverse programming is available in our continuously on-demand world. As I mentioned about social media, how that's been important, I just read on the plane on my way down here this morning from San Francisco, Nielsen just came out with a study. And I was particularly struck by this particular stat where African-American millennials, 55% of them are on social media for more than an hour each day. But the bigger piece of this is that a higher proportion of black millennials, the 55%, that represents the highest proportion of millennials overall. So black millennials, I know Hispanics as well, have been huge in terms of engaging around social media. And so there is a demand for diverse content as exemplified by that statistic. It's just a matter of making sure that we put those pieces into place so that that diverse content can be recognized and heard. I'll just close by saying that, you know, as Verizon has changed as well, you know, we've had, we just had our AOL transaction. We also have a wireless on-demand product called Go90, where you can get your content anytime, anywhere on your mobile device. Again, competing with other on-demand social media like platforms. And it's given Verizon the sort of gravitas, so to speak, in terms of going back to my original point, which is around we have to represent the communities that we serve. So if we don't have diverse programming on Go90 or Fios TV reflected in our channel lineup and others, we're not serving the communities that we should be serving. And so as a public policy person, I'll just end with this. I think all of these transitions and all these dynamic opportunities that are occurring right now for diverse communities is great. The more that we can make sure that we ensure consumer choice, that means the ability for diverse audiences to be able to access content on whatever device, whenever they want, in an on-demand environment across any platform, will increase that sort of, that diverse opportunity that we're going to be talking about on this panel today. So I appreciate everybody and their time for being here today at the Skirball Cultural Center. I have to put in this quick plug that, you know, our foundation actually supports the Skirball Cultural Center. It's a beautiful place right here in Los Angeles. And the folks here, Jacqueline Tatel, she's one of the executives here. She's been a real champion in terms of embracing diverse communities that are represented here in Los Angeles. And so I encourage you, even after the panel, to go make sure you walk around the grounds and take a look at the museum, because there's so many different communities, Jewish, African American, Hispanic, so on and so forth, that were reflected here at the community center. So I just had to shamelessly put in that plug, if you didn't mind. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Dr. Sanderlin.
Yes, I will be switching to Verizon.
That's what I like to hear.
well,
I'm not in
well,
sales, by the way.
Well, I want to only go through you.
Okay, fantastic.
And I'm trying to figure out how to get a Peabody Award, too. So I'm working on all of that. We'll be talking, Dr. Williams, about something. I want to be a star and actress, but I missed my chance many years ago. But I think I have the best reason, at least I feel I have the best reason to be here, because I'm here because of students. I am a product of a great community. And I just felt it was my calling, and I don't know if I could use that word, but I think you will understand what I mean by a calling or a driven feeling that you have to help other scholars achieve. And so I come from the beautiful city of Inglewood, where the Rams are, and everything's exciting, and they're building, and trucks are driving, and dirt is flying everywhere. It's just wonderful. And so I live there, and so it took me about 21 years to get there. And now that I've been there since July 1, it has been a wonderful ride. And so today, if you had saw some students, I was with a delegate of students from Inglewood High School. And so we skipped school. No, skip that. No, we didn't skip school. We came today. It was school, right? Because we felt like that it was important to take them out of class, traditional class, to bring them to where they can actually have hands-on experience. And so their wonderful tall principal is right there. I want to give him a hand. Most principals don't get a hand all the time. And he came with his scholars. And we brought about 15 scholars today on the bus. And they were dressed up. They had their little pads, and some of them had their phones, and they're taking notes. And they got a chance to meet people and eat some food, I believe, and just have an experience that doesn't happen in traditional education. And so what does that mean for us, and why are we here and on this panel? And I think it's because, one, we believe in being diverse in school now. School is changing, and the whole concept of school is changing, as I've been a principal for about 18 years. And so now I have the opportunity to work with students in a different way, because we're working with different students. In fact, I say we're working with scholars. These scholars that we even brought today, 100% of them are from very low socioeconomic status. About 20% of the entire district, we have students who are foster youth. And then we have about maybe 10% who are homeless, and homeless means you just don't have a residence. But you live somewhere, but it may not be where you're actually getting mail. But out of all of those statistics, this is the best statistic. 100% of them are great. 100% of them are driven and excited and wanted to be here and love the ride along the way. And if you ever passed any of them today, they might have spoken to you, because we teach them that if you really want someone to look at you and take notice of you, you have to take notice of them. And so we prepared them for this day. And so for most of us, we got up in the morning, we came here. But for them, they've been thinking about it all week long. And so it means a lot for us to change what we're doing in public education. And some of the changes that are happening in Inglewood are very exciting. For example, Inglewood High School, we decided not to just teach what we have learned, but it's time for us to prepare them for the real world. So we're bringing in career and robotics and STEM and opportunities for students to take technology and apply it to what they really want to do. And so they loved. I told them, this is not skipping school today. You're in school, because this is hands-on learning. This is an opportunity for them to get a reflection of what you do and what they are going to do. Not what they may do, but we believe that if we speak into the life of them, that when they grow up, they'll be speaking back to us. And so we tell them, this is what you're going to do. This is what you are going to be. I mean, to meet Eric, for example, who is, I think, I call a real model, not a role model, because many times the students can't get to them. You know, you can't get to a role model you see on television, they're far away, you just look at them. But a real model is someone who may look like them or not like them, but at least there's someone whom they can ask questions and talk to. And so those are some of our scholars that you're seeing. I didn't know that you were going to have this up there. That's great. So these are some of our scholars that just we see every day and that are engaged in real literacy, but not only literacy, but learning how to apply technological experiences, robotic experiences, engineering, and career pathways. And so one of the things that I do as Executive Director of School and Community Relations is I walk the street. And I don't mean it in the way you thought. Okay, so let me fix that. I'm out in the community. I knock on doors. I go to homes. I talk to people. I talk to businesses. And I find ways to close the opportunity gap. Many of you have heard in education closing the achievement gap, and that's something I just don't say, because I don't believe that that's necessarily something that's our challenge. Our challenge is to close the opportunity gap. Because if our scholars are willing to take the opportunity, and many of them are, then we are going to be behind them to help them take a leap into that next step. And many of them, it's just a next step, and then a next step. And so what we have is diversifying what we're offering in school to prepare them for college and career. Because many individuals who are CEOs are not older. They're very young, but they're very driven, and they're very passionate. But oftentimes, as we have heard with Dr. Williams, sometimes there's a door shut. But what we're teaching in Inglewood is that you need to create your own door. And our scholars are very much interested in creating their own door. So we're teaching in a different way, and I believe in partnerships. So we're not looking for the state to give us anything. We're not looking for the federal government to say, here's another grant, because I personally just don't believe in grants, because when they end, everything ends. But I believe in partnerships. And so we have, and I have partnered with the William Morris. You heard Dina talk about WME. I've partnered with them for over 8 years. But they're just one of the 179 partners that I have been working with that have opened up doors and created doors for students to be able to go to studios, to be able to go to restaurants and find out what the CEO of that restaurant is. Being one of the wonderful restaurants that has done this over 8 years has been Laurie's Prime Rib Restaurant in Beverly Hills. And most of us who've been there know that's about $45 a plate without alcohol. And for 8 years, they've been bringing students from Compton, where I began, taking them to eat there, learning what it takes to manage a place like that. That's a career opportunity that just doesn't happen in traditional school. So it's time for educators, and this is just something I guess I'm preaching, I guess I'm out there excited talking about everywhere I go, that as educators we have to think differently. We have to be global. We have to think partnerships, because it's a real win-win for everybody. In fact, before I leave this room, you are a partner. I'll find you, I will get you. And guess what? Was that a voice in the wilderness? That's right. I met you here last year, and now she's come all the way to Inglewood, did a wonderful program. Our students are learning how to be a puppeteer because of this wonderful woman. That's awesome. And I got your card today, sir, with the hat on. Trust me, you'll be in Inglewood next week. We cook good there. Understand this, and I'm going to close because, as you can tell, I'm excited. And I don't know if it's a passion that is a nervous passion, but it's a passion that I love because it drives me to go to work every day. Our scholars need experiences. They need exposure. They need to know that they are worth it. And oftentimes, that lack of worth is what causes young people to make wrong decisions. But this principal has decided my school might not look the best, but it's not going to stop him from doing what he does, which is schooling. So the new project that we're on in Inglewood right now is to make Inglewood High School a school of robotics and virtual reality. We're going to start with one classroom, and it's going to spread. You notice I said it's going to. Where is it going to come from? I don't know. Nor do I care. But I know that it's going to happen, because our students cannot wait any longer. And so for those of you who have that expertise, please let us know how we might be able to do that. I'd like to see a Verizon classroom. It's going to happen. I would like to see a STEM project classroom. It's going to happen. And as I told our scholars before they got on the bus back to Inglewood, and they're there now, don't worry, it is going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. That was amazing. Dr. Jones.
Do you have Peabody website?
I do.
Great. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you being here. It's a panel on diversity in Hollywood is not as sexy as virtual reality, but damn, is it not important. And, you know, and why is because it's about our citizenship, as I'm going to talk about. And if you ever wanted to think citizenship wasn't important, then 2016, right now in this election season, should call that to the fore. So let me start by what are the Peabody Awards and why am I here? The Peabody Awards are the oldest award for broadcasting and electronic media. We say we're the oldest and most prestigious award that you've probably not heard of. And why, I don't know. Many people in the industry, Dina, go down to our board. I don't know, yeah, the who we are, you're on the right page, that's right. And keep going down.
Board of
yes,
Jurors,
that'll lower
Advisory Board.
No, Board of Jurors, some photos will appear, hopefully, maybe not. The Peabody Award was formed, we celebrate our 75th anniversary this year, and we were formed as the Pulitzer of Radio in 1940 at the University of Georgia. Many people in the industry know of the world, many people outside don't. And let's go to, so why am I here? We have a big award show every year in New York City. For years it was at the Waldorf, now it's down in Cipriani, Wall Street. This year, Keegan-Michael Key hosted the show. And it's a big to-do, but we've not been on television traditionally. And as Dina said, I've changed that in the last 3 years. What makes us different is, and I noticed, or let me go back, what I noticed and why I'm here is that we received 1,200 submissions. We give out 30 awards across genre and platform. We give out awards in news and documentary and in entertainment, but also in children's programming and public service. And what I noticed in the Oscars So White discussion is that Peabody, not only last year 30% of our awards were stories of, about, or from people of color, but for the last decade, the average amount was 35%. Some years it was in the 20s, some years in the upper 40s. So I think that's why I'm here, is that the Peabody Awards have embraced these diverse voices. But why, you might ask? Well, what makes Peabody distinctive is that we focus on the story itself, not on, it's not a craft award. So it's not best acting, it's not best directing, it's not best writing, it's the story itself. When you win a Peabody Award, they choose who accepts it. And instead, what we have is a board of jurors of 18 people, often from the industry, but sometimes not, sometimes scholars, sometimes former government officials, sometimes TV critics, who exist as a step removed from the industry. We meet face-to-face in 3 sets of deliberations, and to win a Peabody Award, it's a unanimous vote. 18 people. So when I first got there, I remember a woman won an award from Al Jazeera on Israel-Palestine. It was a piece called Sheikh Jarrah, Your Neighborhood. She said, if you can get 18 people to agree on Israel-Palestine, you must be doing something right.
That's an award in itself.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I'll just give you an example of some of, I could read the awards this year. The Laquan McDonald investigation, the secret mustard gas experiments on African Americans in World War II, the case of desegregation, Beast of No Nation, Blackish, Master of None, What Happened, Miss Simone, Transparent, a POV piece on immigration, and a Lifetime Achievement Award for documentarian Stanley Nelson. In 2006, pieces on AIDS in Black America, failure of East St. Louis schools, Latinos in the military, a really cool piece from Washington Post on being a black man. Washington Post doing video, it's a web piece. Inner city schools, Pan-Asian immigration, Mexican immigration, the Boondocks, Ugly Betty, When the Levees Broke, the Spike Lee documentary. So that's 2006. I just read you 2015. So the question is, why? Why do we do this? And I think the answer ultimately is one, media scholars often talk about that the American system of communication is overly geared toward consumers and not us as citizens. Most of the construction of broadcasting systems, beginning in the 1920s up through the development of television, everywhere in the world, Israel, Canada, Japan, Europe, was often about the public interest. And in America, we made choices really back into the 1850s that all forms of communication here would be privately owned. And why do I bring that up is that most systems have operated in the public interest and treated its viewers as citizens as much or more so than consumers. And I think what has defined the Peabody Awards is that we get 1,200 submissions, we narrow that down to 30, and what's standing at the end are those stories, as we put, the stories that matter. Stories that say something to us at that moment in time about who we are and what we as a society are struggling with. And so I read you some of those types of things. Other examples, you might have documentaries on people like Billy Strayhorn or Nina Simone. These are some of the ones in the last 10 years, or James Brown. You might have documentaries on people such as Cory Booker in Brick City, or issues such as how the minority population of African Americans in particular were overly affected by the flood in New Orleans. Entertainment shows like Treme or the #1 Ladies Detective Agency, or pieces by D.L. Hughley or Key and Peele. News pieces, as we've talked about. Doc McStuffins, so the airline person this week, African-American doctor tries to help a patient, and she's no, sit down, sweetie, we'll wait for real doctors. And we tweeted, guess what, these inherent biases, shows like Doc McStuffins can perhaps begin to train young people that doctors come in many colors. So this is what Peabody does. And what are our contributions? What are we trying to do? I think, again, look at the diversity of stories that somehow impact us, that matter. Stories that matter, that impact our citizenship. And I think that's probably why we're not well known, is that it's an award that is about, because we're focused on the story, it's not the celebration of celebrity. Our show is not about the reveal. It's not about the fashion, the Oscar de la Renta dresses, even though we do have a red carpet. It's about the story itself. And so that's what we do. Our show, we're very successful on Pivot Network in producing an industry quality show. This year, we're trying to put it on PBS. PBS wants the show, but we need to pay production. So Mr. Reid and I are going to have a conversation about Verizon being a presenting sponsor of the Peabody Awards. I'm joking, but maybe we will. So there seems like two of us want something.
Exactly, it's going to run.
But we are privileged to be at the University of Georgia to say something back to the industry. These are the types of stories that we should be talking about. We curate from 1,200 down to 30. These are the stories on the public agenda, and these are the things we should be talking about. And so Peabody, I've only been there 3 years. We're transforming in many ways to not, I like to say my job begins not when I hand you a statuette and say, good job. It's then to not just celebrate, but talk about why these storytellers at this moment, at this time, are the ones we should be talking about over a given year. So I'll leave it there. We can open it up and you feel free to ask questions, but that's kind of who we are and why I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you so much to our panelists, and we've got about 10 minutes for Q&A. Thank you, everyone, just for sticking to time. So that's my pet peeve, is when there's just 2 minutes. So do we have any questions from our audience? Yes, sir.
So in bringing some of the technology to the students, how much of it is if you were to rate the technology and having the technology at your disposal, or the people who are the mentors, teachers, what mix do you look for in bringing that kind of an education in to bring them into creating something?
The question, I'm sorry, I have to repeat it for the online audience, is about technology in classrooms and the mix of basically tech folks and educators, or, yeah?
Well, thank you for the question, and I'm going to lean also on Principal Douglas to kind of weigh in on that. We are really trying to do it one-to-one. That is our goal. Our goal is for every student to have a device. Many of them have a phone, so they're already kind of one-to-one. And if I'm answering your question, if I'm not, please clarify. But right now, what our goal is, and it will continue to be our goal, one is to make sure that we have blended learning. And by doing that is having enough hardware, okay, and in our classrooms as well as in our computer labs. Right now, we do not. So and as far as technological people, we're very low there. This is the reason why we're looking to partner with individuals who can help us and who also see things differently outside of the scope of the education world that we live in, who can help students actually see the working side of technology as well. So our blend is one-to-one. Our goal is there. We are not there at all, but that is our focus. Principal, you want to add to that?
There's two problems I see with technology in public education. The first is whenever a student steps into a classroom, they've stepped back 30 years in technology. And by that I mean many of the computers, the software, the technology that they have in the classroom, the level of comfort that the teacher has with that software or technology is antiquated. They can do more on their cell phone devices or their smartphones than you can do with all of the technology in your classroom, and are far more comfortable, far quicker, and just far more desirable getting the information out. So what we need is, one, to embrace technology, and by that I mean become masters of it, not slaves of it. Secondly, we have to stop accepting sort of the hand-me-downs of technology. When we get donations, we get what you are replacing. You get your new computers and we get your old. And we know in computer technology or any other technology that when you bought it, it was already 3 years out of date. Yeah. You've had it for 5 years, and then you give it to us, and many of the things are just gone. So we're looking for someone to help us be thinkers of the future. Our students will lead the technology revolution in the classroom, not the teachers. We want our kids to be creators of technology, not purchasers of it. So in order for that to happen, they must have up-to-date, state-of-the-art, ahead of the game. We are so far behind in so many different ways, and we have come so many times with our hands out. Right now, I'm asking for your presence more than your dollars, but your dollars must support your presence. So it's a cyclical process, and as Dr. Sanderlin will tell you, I'm not passionate about it, I'm obsessive about it. These are things I obsess about, and the only way for it to happen is for us to embrace it and let the students lead the way with it. Because we can't tell them what the technology is, they can tell us.
And so right now we have a big banner that says, build something spectacular. And so that's our theme right now. We're going to get started with whatever we have, and also ideas. Your stories, if you are willing, can I just put this challenge out? If you're willing to come to Inglewood, and I'm just really kind of begging you, to come just share your story. Share who you are. Be a real model. Allow students to ask you, our scholars to ask you questions about what you do. You don't know what that's going to do. And I really hope it changes you and seeing a different perspective of what our scholars can do and will do. So I hope that answered a little bit of your question. We don't have the best technological people in our schools today. In fact, many times teachers are more afraid of technology than students. And so we decided to release the students and allow them, if we give them the tools, I know, and they'll do it responsibly as long as we create the structure.
So I was just going to quickly add, that's a great audience question that you asked, and to the point of what Dr. Sanderlin and Principal was saying, technology is advancing so fast right now that it's really, really difficult to keep pace. And so this is a message that I always encourage policymakers, particularly as we talk about 5G, developing smart cities. We have to have ample capacity in order for that technology to work. So if you have slow speeds and the equipment is already slow, then how are you going to be enriched by the technology that you're teaching in the classroom? And so, for us at Verizon, it's really about staying ahead of that demand, making sure that there's sufficient capacity that's out there for wireless connectivity so that students can engage in real time around the technologies that are in the marketplace. I'll just make a second point here, which goes back to what the challenge that Dr. Sanderlin just gave to me in terms of Verizon's work in the educational segment, which is, number one, we have Verizon Innovation Learning Schools, VILS. So I encourage you to take a look at that, and we'll figure out, a way that we can continue the conversation around VILS. We also nationwide have an app innovation challenge, and we've been doing that for a number of years, where we encourage kids in middle school, also in elementary school, to work with a teacher or a sponsor on the campus or at the school to create an app that will create positive change in that community. And so we've been involved with this particular app challenge, and again, it's on a national level for a number of years. I encourage you to go to our website and take a look at that.
Is this where they can learn about it up here?
Yes,
The
it's at the
innovative
Verizon
thinking?
Foundation page. There you go, yes.
Okay.
So I encourage you to take a look at that. I know that for this year, the application cycle is closing down shortly.
But I know
so-
you now.
Yes, so
Oh.
get your submissions in there soon, of course. Get your submissions in there soon.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, it really does come down to, we have to make sure that in our underrepresented communities that we do have the technological tools that are up to date so that they can engage with not only the tools of today, but the tools of tomorrow.
Any other questions? We probably have time for one more.
Not a question, just to say something.
Sure, absolutely. Questions or
I
comments?
just want to recognize you for your perception, for your recognizing the importance of getting the students out of the classroom, because going to college is not for everyone. Learning about being an entrepreneur, learning about the other businesses is critical, and our kids, especially in underserved communities, get stuck a lot. So I just thank you for your passion, your determination, your mission.
Thank you.
And just being here to have that conversation, because without you, we will continue to have the same challenges of diversity in entertainment, and we do have them. And they won't change until the bottom up changes. I think we've got a great generation to change that, so thank you.
Thank you.
To your point, I would just say, just as a word of advice, I've talked about, from Verizon's perspective, we have 2 innovation centers, one back east in Waltham, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. We have one on the West Coast, Innovation Center West, in San Francisco. And I can't tell you how cool it is to have students come in and really get to smell and touch and feel the technology that is out there. Virtual reality was talked about, augmented reality, all those sort of things that are going to make the entertainment industry go to that next level. It's all there. And so having those experiences, I can't tell you how valuable they are to get kids really engaged around science, technology, engineering, and math. And it's not just Verizon, it's Lucasfilms, it's others that are out there that have these sort of tech labs, these sandboxes where they're experimenting about how to make 3D real, how do you make ultra high definition real, how do you go to 8K. All those things that I get to see at the Consumer Electronics Show, that we as consumers, that's a great place to actually, see technology at work in the entertainment industry, and the National Association of Broadcasters show as well. But it's that sort of cool stuff that we as professionals and as consumers get to see, But for the students, it's really about trying to find out who are those firms that have these sort of sandboxes and labs that they get to have that real-time experience. Field trips is what we used to call them, being old school.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess
Today
I'll
was
call
a field
them,
trip.
that's right, experience
That's right.
trips now, so that we can get kids really excited about the future of technology.
Thank you to all of our panelists. We're out of time. Thank you all for being here.